Tonight on Primetime, Iranians take to the streets to celebrate the country's new supreme leader as Israeli missiles continue to fall. Meanwhile, extreme market volatility continues as oil prices hit their biggest spike in 6 years. A new name at the top, but will anything change? Good evening. Iran has chosen its next supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, the second son of the late Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. Now, the clerical body responsible for selecting the country's highest authority announced the decision on Sunday, urging the public to stand behind the new leadership and maintain national unity.
Iran has named Mojtaba Khamenei as the country's new supreme leader, following the death of his father, Ali Khamenei, in US-Israeli strikes late last month. The decision was announced by Iran's Assembly of Experts, an 88-member body of senior clerics responsible for selecting the leader of the Islamic Republic. In a statement broadcast on state television, the Assembly said Mojtaba Khamenei was appointed by a decisive vote during an extraordinary session held late Sunday. At 56, Mojtaba Khamenei becomes Iran's third supreme leader, a position that holds ultimate authority over the country's political system, armed forces, and key strategic decisions. A mid-ranking cleric, Mojtaba has long been viewed as a potential successor to his father and is believed to wield significant influence within Iran's powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the country's wider security establishment. Despite never holding elected office, he has for years been considered a key figure behind the scenes in Iran's political and religious circles. Supporters in Tehran welcomed the announcement, expressing hope that the new leader will continue the course set by his father. International reaction has been tense. Earlier last week, US President Donald Trump warned that Washington would oppose the appointment of Mojtaba Khamenei, saying the United States should have a role in Iran's leadership transition. With tensions across the Middle East escalating, Mojtaba Khamenei now assumes leadership of the Islamic Republic at a pivotal moment for the country and the wider region.
Well, before we look at what this means for Iran and the wider region, it's worth taking a closer look at the man now stepping into the country's most powerful position, Mojtaba Khamenei.
Mojtaba Khamenei is the second son of the late supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and has been named Iran's new supreme leader. He was born in 1969 in Mashhad, Iran's second largest city and an influential religious hub centered around the Imam Reza shrine. He grew up in a family deeply rooted in Iran's clerical establishment. After secondary school, he moved to Qom, the country's main center of Shia scholarship, where he pursued religious studies and later taught theology. During the Iran-Iraq conflict, he briefly volunteered with Basij-linked units as a teenager, a period his supporters often cite to highlight his early revolutionary credentials. By the late 1990s, as his father's authority grew, Mojtaba became a key behind-the-scenes figure in Tehran. Senior politicians and security officials often had to go through him to reach the supreme leader, giving him significant informal influence within the system. Mojtaba gained wider attention during the 2005 presidential election, when rivals accused him of backing hardline networks that helped Mahmoud Ahmadinejad win. In 2009, as protests swept central Tehran, foreign governments linked him to the state's response, accusations Iran rejected. Mojtaba's position also strengthened through marriage into the family of Gholam Ali Haddad Adel, a prominent conservative figure. The alliance linked the Khamenei family to a key religious political network in Tehran. Over time, Mujtaba expanded his influence across clerical, financial and security institutions in Tehran, Qom and Mashhad. After his father's death, he quickly emerged as the leading successor, backed by IRGC circles, hardline clerics in Qom and key political figures in Tehran.
Okay, to help us understand what this leadership change could mean for Iran and the wider region, I'm joined now by Dr. Julia Roknefard, Senior Lecturer at the School of Law and Governance at Taylor's University in Malaysia. Dr. Roknefard, thank you very much indeed for joining us on PrimeTime. It's good to have you, particularly as I know that where you are in Kuala Lumpur, or more, as more fashionable people call it, KL. It's gone midnight, I believe, so we really do appreciate your time with us. Very significant moment this for Iran, isn't it? Both politically and symbolically.
Yes.
It is indeed both politically and symbolically a very important moment for Iran. Maybe we could compare its magnitude to February 1979, bringing us back to the times of Iran Revolution. Now that Iran had to go finally through the transition of power that has been envisioned because Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has been ill for quite some time. He wasn't very young. He was 86 years old. His son is 30 years younger. And everybody expected that this transition will have to occur soon. But it probably occurred sooner than later with his assassination, together with some members of his family. And they were different theories about how this transition is going to occur. But I think Mujtaba Khamenei has been the forerunner in all this discussions, even though he's also a creative figure in Iranian politics, but nevertheless quite some experience in both managing the assets of the Islamic part of Khamenei family itself, and also close ties to the security apparatus, to IRGC, to the Islamic Revolutionary Guards. So he's had an experience of governance. He's a mujtahid, he's a religious scholar who qualifies for this position. And turns out it was decided that he is the best man for the job. Now that the country is going through this transition at the times of war, there is the slight effect of rallying around the flag, but maybe not as social cohesion, but due to the previous actions of the aggression of the protests in January, and also people try that occur in different cities of the country.
And what do we know? What do we know about how he might differ from his father? I mean, as you say, 30 years younger, not entirely the same man. Do we think that this is going to mean more or less attacks on the Gulf countries? Will he be more or less open to diplomacy? Give us a sense of the differences between the two men.
More or less, it will largely depend on IRGC, who are directing the operation together with attacks against Gulf countries and other locations, but mostly Gulf countries and Israel, of course. He is known to be a more hardline politician than his father. So the only expectation here could probably be of him taking a harder line. But for now, I think we should expect the current campaign, the current war to continue as is. Iran is fulfilling its promise to strike back at all the locations where American facilities are located, military facilities in the first turn, although we've seen also strikes at the civilian infrastructure, and of course against Israel as a whole. So in terms of the warfare, I don't think we should be expecting much of a change, except for maybe that he is not just a symbolic nominee, not a symbolic figure that was appointed or chosen to this post. He has been prepared to that. He has strong direct ties with IRGC, and he should be considered not as the symbolic appointment, but rather one of those who are currently making decisions with regards to this ongoing war.
Very interesting indeed. I mean, he's not the leader that the Americans wanted. That's been well publicized. Although they have known now for some time, I think, that he's very likely to have got the position. What do you expect in terms of a reaction from the US and Israel? I mean, to be very blunt, are they likely to try and assassinate him? Will they try and discredit him in some way? What do you expect the reaction to be from the opposition?
It's hard to predict with President Trump, given that many observers cannot establish, and probably people in his own administration cannot establish the exact aims of this operation. And we could talk about that. If indeed the US, as it's widely blamed, following the Israel's lead on this, or US is pursuing a wider agenda on this, and everything falls in line with that at the moment, so everything is going fine according to the president administration. But most likely, yes, it's putting a target on his back because President Trump already said that he's not the candidate that he wanted. Not sure what candidates he had in mind, but it turns out not Reza Pahlavi, the son of the last Shah of Iran, expelled from the country in 1979. It really will depend on what kind of line he will take. And probably, as I said, it will be a hard line, which will be putting Iran on a more confronted way with the United States. And even without Mujtaba in the equation, we could expect that, given how the United States broke the trust, twice attacking Iran within the last year, while conducting some sort of negotiations and even seemingly achieving some results. But probably Mujtaba is also better protected because we've seen that even though Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was assassinated together with some family members, including Mujtaba's wife and son, and Ayatollah Khamenei's granddaughter, Mujtaba managed to remain alive. So probably some security arrangements around him would be different to keep him alive and present him as a stronger, more vigilant, and more dynamic leader.
Now, the new Supreme Leader obviously is going to be very focused on this particular war that's taking place. But at some point, that war is going to end. What will be his message, his vision internally within the country, not just for the duration of the war, but for his sense of the sort of country that he wants Iran to become?
That is a hard question when it comes to the economic situation, and we know that the protests were largely motivated by the economic hardship that people experienced, not their political grievances even. That was the moment when the social package was not delivered anymore sufficiently, and for him to resolve it without lifting of international sanctions, of the US sanctions, the EU sanctions. He himself, in fact, is included in sanctions list since 2019, if I'm not mistaken. That would be a very hard job to do, although we know that it's not only sanctions alone that have effect on what is going on in an economic sense in Iran. It's also gross mismanagement that is happening there. And there, one of the few hopes that the Iranian leadership, if things do not change in relations with the United States in particular, the hope will be to its established allies, among whom we know are China and Russia, and it will have to rely on their economic support, on their investment into infrastructure, and try to sort of mitigate the effects of both sanctions and the mismanagement, misgovernance that occurs in Iran. And probably it will be able to hold for some time while tightening the grip on the social, on the civil society activities.
And in terms of how we expect him to govern, you've already given us an indication that he is someone who does not see this as an entirely symbolic role, that he wants to be hands-on in the way that he leads. Some analysts have talked about a sort of separation internally in Iran between the supreme leader and the IRCG, and then sort of separate entity being the president and the foreign minister. Will he pursue that separation, or will he look to sort of unite the sort of governance body as a whole, do you think?
I don't think there is a need to do that. And again, we've seen his tight connection with IRGC. He's quite involved into the decision-making process on the part of IRGC. So we shouldn't see him as a solely spiritual leader representing the spiritual bodies of Iran. He's a prime decision maker, and indeed he should be seen maybe as primus inter pares, the first among the equals in this position, rather than a symbol. And there is that tighter connection between IRGC and the supreme leader in this case, rather than between these two institutions and the institutions of presidency or the government, which includes the foreign ministry, and the foreign minister himself, which is Abbas Araghchi at the moment. Even though the president, Pezeshkian, he is currently, he was for a few days a part of the leadership council with an interim supreme leader, but the president is a traditionally weak figure in the institutional system of Iran, so he's not a decision maker, and that's why also I think we haven't seen much effort made in order to assassinate him as a high-ranking official within the Iranian structure. Even the promise that he's made that Iran is not going to attack the Gulf countries anymore was broken quite quickly by the RGC, because they haven't given this promise.
Yes.
And the attacks continued according to the military strategy that they chose. So I don't see this the point for the supreme leader to reform the system now in any direction, except for if it's going to be a total overhaul, but that probably will require another revolution or counter-revolution in this case.
Very interesting indeed. Dr. Rocknefal, we thank you very much for joining us tonight. We appreciate your analysis very much indeed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, for millions of people across the region, the reality of war has become an all too personal story. Places across the Gulf in particular that had built a reputation on being a safe place to live and do business are now feeling intense pressure. Businessman Kerry Adler wrote an open letter to the US President Donald Trump highlighting the human cost of this escalating crisis. Well, I'm delighted to say tonight we're joined by the author of that letter, Mr. Kerry Adler. Mr. Adler, very good indeed to see you there. Thank you for joining us on PrimeTime. Now, I know you were in Abu Dhabi, weren't you, when the drones were crossing the sky? I mean, just to begin with, just personally, that must have been a shocking moment for you. Did you get a sense that from that point, life had changed?
You know, to be brutally honest, you don't really appreciate or understand the force and the magnitude of missiles or drones until they're over your head in your backyard. And so initial shock and a little anxiety, but that was very quickly replaced with calm, not panic. It was replaced with communication. I had experienced firsthand what I always believed, and many of us who've come and chosen Dubai or Abu Dhabi as a home, but to actually experience the response in such a calm, disciplined manner where civil aviation, civil services, maritime services, communication to the people, sending out notices, telling them where to go, where to be safe. It is on the I mean, if I were to look at this as a Broadway show, which it's not because this is not something enjoyable, but as if someone had rehearsed this for a decade. But I don't think they did. They just instinctively knew what to do, which for me and my family, we are just so internally grateful for the investments that they've made to ensure the safety of everyone, regardless of their race, creed, nationality. I can't imagine living anywhere else in the world today.
And your letter to President Trump, I've got some of it here, it focuses heavily on civilians, children, workers, families. Why did you feel it was so important now to kind of shift this conversation away from political strategy and towards the human cost of this?
Well, you know, my father taught me the word is some of the most powerful weapons in the world. And, you know, being one of 13 million people living in this country, it's hard for people somehow to express themselves. I have, over the years, as an entrepreneur and a global business person, deals and works in many cultures, I tried to look at it from every, because at the end of the day, we're all just human. It doesn't matter who we come from or how much wealth we have. As Sheikh Zayed said, the wealth of this country is the. So I sat there for 4 or 5 hours and tried to really find meaning in a way that to try to communicate that there is more to than just about oil or land or regime change. There is no arguing that the Iranian regime has oppressed its 90 million citizens for decades. And it's no secret that they've called for the death of Israel and the Zionist culture. And it's no secret that they consider the Americans the enemy. But at the end of the day, at what cost? At what cost is this have to be to bring so many into the fold and to attack them without provocation or without any notice, reason, or rationale? It brought inside me a heart that I had to communicate and at least share the perspective of someone who's not a statesperson. I'm not a diplomat. I'm not someone who is going to decide the strategy and the next steps forward. But one thing I can tell you is you cannot have a plan if you can't have a strategy if you don't have the next day. Because at the end of this conflict, which I hope ends sooner rather than later, people are going to judge the leader on the place where the missiles landed. Yeah. How did we bring society back together? We're all humans. We all want to live in peace. We all want to experience life. We face so many challenges, from climate change to water shortages. We face so many personal challenges as this world grows and as AI takes more of a prevalent role in our daily lives. So this is not a challenge we need. But the one thing I will, a head of state or a leader, but the one thing I would say if I would say clearly to the Iranian people, which Trump did, that we are there, we are supporting you, we hear you, we want to help you. The piece that's missing is the blueprint. And just as 4 or 5 years ago, when COVID struck the world, it didn't discriminate between race, color, creed, or richness. It was indiscriminate. But somehow, as humanity, we found a way to work together, putting any of our differences aside, looking at humanity and looking at the value of a human life. I can tell you that this country used every resource, having vaccines to the poorest people in the world that couldn't afford to buy them. And somehow we overcame it. We are living proof that we can survive something as bad as COVID. Well, this is the military version of COVID. And I believe every great nation, quoting the Prime Minister of Canada, great power or lesser power, it doesn't matter. I think these nations need together, America, China, Russia, India, the UAE, the whole GCC, and create a blueprint that allows everyone to go without living in fear, without fearing that their children may go to school and not come back, without leaving their families and not knowing if they'll get in the country. This is the fundamental right of a human being, is to be able to live in peace. And that what makes this country and this region so special, but in this country, is the tolerance, the respect, the leadership that has demonstrated. This I see around the news people worried about, well, you should go to Dubai, or maybe don't go to Abu Dhabi, maybe we should move our investments. No, on the contrary. How you judge a leadership is in a state of crisis. Now, you don't wish for these crises, but if they happen, that's how you judge someone. How did they conduct themselves? How and what did they do to ensure the welfare and safety of their citizens, of their residents? The Sheikh Zayed, he went to the hospital and visited each and every one of the individuals that were injured. Himself, anyone who was stranded in this country, the government extended their hotel stays, meals at their cost. The government went to such great pains to ensure that there's business continuity. I was with my family over the weekend. We went to the local shopping mall, and it was people were continuing on their lives because that's what everyone deserves. And we have greater problems.
And Kerry, sorry to cut in there, but we've seen a mix of comments on social media, most of which obviously very supportive. Some comments pointing out that people, it's mostly billionaire businessmen and influencers in Lamborghinis, and of course, billionaire businessmen and influencers in Lamborghinis have just as much of a right to peace and prosperity as anybody else. But nevertheless, it's also millions and millions of migrant workers, isn't it, too, in these countries who've moved to places like Abu Dhabi, Doha, Dubai, in search of a better life, working hard, trying to improve themselves. What's been your observation on those communities and how they have adapted?
The one thing that I have seen in my life, I've seen several crises. This obviously is probably one of the largest that many of us have seen in our life. But what I have seen is the resilience, the sense of community. It's almost like it's embedded in your genetics when you arrive here and spend a couple months. You realize that this is a country that treats every human being like a human, irregardless of their wealth or riches or what they drive. I don't drive a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. It doesn't matter what I drive. I am a human, and I am treated with the same dignity and respect as a worker who came from Canada or Bangladesh or India or the United States. People, and that's what attracts me to this country. It doesn't matter what you dress. It doesn't matter what you drive. It's your willingness to be open, to be transparent, to be respectful and mindful, and believe in peaceful coexistence. It doesn't matter who or where you came from. And maybe this is my Canadian, upbringing, as my uncle was one of the leaders of the National Democratic Party when Pierre Elliott Trudeau was in power. And socialized medicine was born at that time. And that provided medicine for people, rich or poor, a socialized system that exists to this day. I can tell you that this morning I opened up my email and I saw a note that the government, through one of their entities, offered and committed that any residential homes that were damaged as a result of the conflict would be fixed at no charge. What country in the world cares about their people that much? This is a model. Now, it's not perfect. And I'm not saying that the US is a bad model or good model. I will never criticize. But what I will say is this is a model that is inclusive. This country, they don't talk about someone who's disadvantaged or someone who, they use different words, handicapped. They call people who have challenges people of determination. I mean, it's just so beautiful that you go to a shopping mall and if someone has some challenges, they are a person of determination. So you just think of the mindset that went into creating this culture of equality, regardless of where you come from. A leadership that wants to ensure the welfare and safety of each and every human being.
And Kerry,
and the amount of it.
Kerry,
yes.
Sorry to cut you. Just turning to leadership elsewhere, in the United States. Just finally, I'd just like to get your message to President Trump. We don't know whether President Trump is watching tonight. We do know that in the past he has watched A News because he has quoted it on Truth Social. So what would be your message to him, your appeal to him at this moment?
Well, I hope he is listening, because your programming is so relevant and so transparent and open as to what is transpiring around the world. And it's hard to actually experience it from sitting in a White House or some other place. Look, I have the highest respect for the leadership of the great United States. I think it's an amazing country. I think they are faced with very difficult challenges. And my message would be, look, you've sent the message to the Iranian people. That is the first step. You've taken a step in concert with Israel to say enough is enough. This can no longer continue. But now's the time to build that blueprint that is not just America's view or Israel's view. It's got to include everyone, otherwise no one would trust it, no one would believe it. And let's face it, this isn't about the Iranian people. This is about the regime that has suppressed and oppressed them for so long. So you need a blueprint that everyone believes and signs up to. You got to lay the foundation, because in any building that's meant to be built and last the test of time and weather, must be built with a strong foundation. And one nation alone can't do that. You need to involve the GCC. You need to involve the major powers of the world to sit around a table, not just to debate, but with one objective: to create a blueprint for the future of Iran, because that would be translating into the future of the Middle East. And as Shimon Peres, the great president of Israel, I had the pleasure of meeting on many occasions, said, peace is ever so elusive. He was a man that dedicated his life to peace, but I don't believe that it is elusive, because like we conquered COVID, and yes, many lives were unfortunately lost, but together humanity could deal with something as traumatic as COVID. And today, we are all better for it. This is the opportunity to bring all those nations together and design a blueprint for a more peaceful society for the generations to come.
Mr. Adler, we thank you very much indeed for your words, your analysis, and for joining us on Primetime tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, we'll take a short break now. When we come back, we'll look at the latest business news stories. Do stay with us.
Long before partition, Pakistanis were singled out, attacked, and forced from their homes.
More than 200,000 Muslims were eliminated through massacres, through displacement.
In all Indian states, the communities are being oppressed, and the Indian Army is committing atrocities against them.
I left Indian-occupied Kashmir and came to Azad Kashmir on foot.
We cannot even go to the graves of our loved ones. We cannot even pray for them.
What is the fault of the Kashmiri people?
Kashmir is the place where partition never ended.
The region of Kashmir is between 3 nuclear powers.
If a nuclear war breaks out here, not only the South Asia, but the entire world will be affected.
If India believes that people of Jammu and Kashmir are with them, let them go for their referendum tomorrow.
For a Kashmiri, what matters the most is Azadi, is the right of self-determination. Azadi from Indian hegemony.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
A warm welcome back to Primetime, wherever you're watching. Now, Andy Mioch is with us with the very latest business news stories. Andy, what's on your agenda tonight?
Well, Guy, stock markets across the globe are tumbling after oil pierced that barrier of $100 a barrel for the first time in 4 years. Besides the Iran war related news, there's also some stories on AI chips, pharma, and football. So let's have a look. First up, oil prices surged as Middle East countries cut production amid the ongoing conflict in the region. The output cuts come as the producers are running out of storage space, with the Strait of Hormuz, a vital export route, being virtually shut.
Oil prices surged over $119 a barrel on Monday, hitting levels not seen since mid-2022, as some major producers cut supplies and fears of prolonged shipping disruptions gripped the market due to the expanding US-Israeli war with Iran. Brent crude futures were at $105.7 per barrel at 9:17 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, while US West Texas Intermediate crude futures were at $103. In a whiplash session, Brent had earlier hit a high of $119.5 a barrel, indicating the biggest ever absolute price jump in a single day, and WTI reached $119.4 a barrel. Before the surge on Monday, Brent had already climbed 28% and WTI 36% over last week. The Strait of Hormuz, through which roughly 1/5 of the world's oil and liquefied natural gas typically passes, is virtually shut. Also boosting prices is the appointment of Mojtaba Khamenei to succeed his father Ali Khamenei as Iran's supreme leader, signaling that hardliners remain firmly in charge. Saudi Aramco has begun cutting output at 2 of its oil fields, sources told Reuters. Analysts said last week they expected OPEC heavyweights, including the United Arab Emirates, to have to cut production soon as they run out of oil storage. Iraqi oil production from its main southern oil fields has fallen by 70%, sources said, with crude storage having reached maximum capacity. The Kuwait Petroleum Corporation also began cutting oil output on Saturday and declared force majeure on shipments, though it did not say how much production it would shut. Saudi Aramco, which can divert some flows via the Red Sea port of Yanbu, has offered more than 4 million barrels of Saudi crude in rare tenders to counteract Hormuz being shut. In gas markets, giant LNG exporter Qatar had already stopped production after attacks on key infrastructure. A fire broke out in the UAE's Fujairah oil industry zone, resulting from falling debris, with no injuries reported. Refinery disruptions add to fuel supply cuts, with Bahrain's Bapco announcing a force majeure following a recent attack on its refinery complex. Saudi Arabia has already shut its biggest oil refinery.
As the Middle East conflict shows no signs of easing, European stocks have fallen to their lowest in more than 2 months. The surging oil prices exacerbated inflation fears.
European shares tumbled to their lowest level in more than 2 months on Monday as a sharp surge in oil prices exacerbated inflation fears, and the US-Israeli war with Iran showed no signs of easing. The Pan-European Stoxx 600 fell for a third straight session, down 1.8% by 9:27 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. The benchmark index shed 5.5% last week, marking its worst weekly performance in nearly a year. The sell-off has now dragged the index nearly 8% below its record closing high hit on February 27th. Europe's fear gauge, the Stoxx Volatility Index, vaulted above the 38-point mark for the first time since April. Europe is heavily dependent on liquefied natural gas and imported oil, which has surged more than 25% to just under $120 a barrel, leaving it particularly exposed to supply shocks. A prolonged conflict could drive energy and transport costs even higher at a time when economic growth is already fragile. At around 10:50 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time, Germany's DAX was down 1.7% and stood at 23,192 points.
Shares across Asian markets also saw major drops, fueled by fears of prolonged shipping disruptions due to the US-Israel war with Iran.
Hong Kong stocks pared losses Monday afternoon as bargain hunters emerged after Iran war fears sent markets tumbling, though other Asian bourses failed to recover as oil prices surged more than 25%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng fell more than 3% to hit 6-month lows in the morning, but the benchmark ended the day down 1.4% after witnessing record daily inflows from mainland investors under Stock Connect. Japan's Nikkei average fell 7% to a 2-month low on Monday amid a broad sell-off as a surge in oil prices fanned fears of inflation and an economic slowdown. The fall is its lowest this year, and according to Japanese media reports, the third lowest in the index's history. Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi said Japan will consider steps to cushion the economic blow from rising fuel costs caused by the conflict in the Middle East, including curbing gasoline prices. Taiwan's benchmark TAIEX dropped 4.4% and closed at 32,110 points on Monday. And in South Korea, the benchmark KOSPI closed down 5.9% to 5,251 points.
Moving away from the war, in chips news, Nexperia's Chinese unit announced a 12-inch wafer breakthrough. The news comes as the subsidiary is locked in a dispute with its Netherlands headquarters.
Dutch chipmaker Nexperia's Chinese subsidiary on Monday said it has successfully achieved small batch production of 12-inch wafer bipolar discrete devices, even as disputes between the Chinese unit and the Dutch headquarters drag on. The breakthrough marked a new milestone in Nexperia China's independent R&D and mass production capabilities, the company said in a statement released on its Chinese social media account. Netherlands-based Nexperia, owned by China's Wingtech Technology, has been embroiled in geopolitical tensions following Dutch state intervention in 2022 that imposed a European management team.
In the world of pharma, Danish drug maker Novo Nordisk said it is dropping a lawsuit against Hims & Hers telehealth company after reaching a deal to allow the platform to sell its blockbuster Wegovy and Ozempic.
Novo Nordisk has agreed to sell its blockbuster Wegovy and Ozempic drugs through US telehealth company Hims & Hers platform, the Danish drug maker said on Monday, ending a legal dispute that erupted last month. The deal marks a turnaround from February, when Novo sued Hims over a $49 compounded alternative to its Wegovy weight loss pill. Novo is grappling with telehealth firms offering cheaper compounded copycat versions of its obesity treatments. Under the agreement, effective later this month, Hims customers will gain access to US regulatory-approved Ozempic and Wegovy injectables, as well as the Wegovy pill at Novo's self-pay prices. The deal follows a warning last week from US regulators to 30 telehealth companies over misleading promotions of compounded drugs from the GLP-1 class that includes Wegovy and Ozempic. The Food and Drug Administration said some firms falsely equated compounded products with approved medications.
And finally, for some sports-related business news, Spanish media are reporting that the U.S. management fund Apollo is set to close the deal on acquiring 55% of shares of football club Atletico Madrid.
US fund Apollo's sports investment arm, Apollo Sports Capital, will complete the acquisition of 55% of Spanish football club Atletico Madrid on March 12th, Spanish newspaper Expansion said on Monday, citing sources. Apollo declined to comment when contacted by Reuters, while Atletico Madrid did not immediately respond to a request for comment. Apollo Sports Capital agreed in November to become the majority shareholder in the top-tier club. A source told Reuters the deal would value the club at approximately 2.5 billion euros.
And that is all in the business brief for tonight. Back to you, Guy.
Andy, thank you very much indeed. Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at tensions between the US and the UK. Do stay with us.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Tensions between Washington and London are rising over the conflict involving Iran, and US President Donald Trump and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer have now held talks. Well, A News' Zainab Farizadeh reports from Manchester.
US President Donald Trump and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer have held talks amid growing tensions between Washington and Westminster over the conflict involving Iran. The call took place on Sunday, less than a day after Trump publicly criticized the British leader, accusing him of failing to support the US campaign against Iran strongly enough. According to Downing Street, the two leaders discussed the escalating situation in the Middle East and military cooperation between the UK and the United States. During the conversation, Starmer also expressed condolences over the deaths of 7 US service members killed during the ongoing crisis. The exchange comes after a series of sharp remarks from Trump earlier this week. The US president said he was not happy with the UK and claimed Starmer was no Winston Churchill, criticizing Britain for initially refusing to support US-led strikes on Iran. Trump argued that Britain's later involvement was unnecessary, saying allies should not join a conflict after we have already won. Despite the criticism, the British government has maintained its position. Downing Street says the UK will not take part in the wider offensive campaign against Iran. However, it has approved the limited use of British air bases for defensive operations. British fighter jets have also been deployed to intercept Iranian missiles and drone targeting allied countries in the region. Speaking on Sunday, Foreign Secretary Yvette Cooper defended the Prime Minister's approach, saying Starmer was right to stand up for Britain's interests. She added that while the UK and the United States remain close allies, the government will not necessarily agree with Washington on every issue. Cooper said Britain would continue to provide defensive support when Iranian attacks threaten partner countries where British citizens are living. Zainab Farizadeh, A News, Manchester, United Kingdom.
Okay, for more on the growing tension between Washington and London, I'm joined now by Dr. John Coulter. He's a political commentator. Dr. Coulter, thank you very much indeed for joining us. We appreciate it very much indeed. Let's start with the big picture. I mean, how serious a spat is this, do you think?
I think it's quite serious, Guy, from the point of view that it's radically different
from any US-UK relationship that there's been in military operations in the past. If we were to take, say, the Kuwait War, the war in Iraq, and even Afghanistan, the United States and the United Kingdom have worked hand in glove in a military operation. I think what is worrying Stammer at this point in time is perhaps the disaster which Afghanistan turned into for the coalition forces. They've withdrawn effectively from the country and the Taliban has taken over. So in their military analysis of Iran, how are they going to get rid of the Revolutionary Guard, probably one of the most well-trained Islamic fundamentalist organizations in the Gulf? How are they going to get rid of them without having to put, as the saying goes, boots on the ground? And this is a key issue that faces Stammer. Also as well, we've got to take into consideration that the Revolutionary Guard and its leadership is trying to widen the conflict. In other words, what they're doing is they're firing their missiles at random at other nations, hoping that that will put pressure on Washington and Westminster to get the Americans and the Israelis to stop their air bombardment.
For years now, John, we've heard about the special relationship. You know, don't worry, the special relationship is still in place. I mean, President Trump even kind of inferred to it in the rebuke that he sent out about Keir Starmer. I mean, to what extent do you fear for that special relationship? Has it almost become a moribund or redundant term, do you think?
I think the real worrying thing is, Guy, is in May this year, there will be very crucial elections in England, Wales, and the British mainland. So basically, I think Keir Starmer is worried about that because the opinion polls are showing that his party, the Labour Party, could take a real hammering. And in fact, he's been losing ground in the opinion polls and he's been losing by-elections. So he'll have both eyes, I would say, mostly on the effect of the voters rather than what is happening in Iran and a long-term solution to the issue there. I think he's adopting very much a defensive pose. As one of your reporters said earlier, he has softened a little bit by allowing very key American planes to be able to land and use United Kingdom territory to presumably attack Iran with specialist missiles. Now, the key issue in all of this that may change the relationship is, can the Revolutionary Guard be defeated by purely an air bombardment, an air war? Now, if the strategists in Washington decide, look, we're going to need boots on the ground, then we could have a real problem and a real strain on that. Because let's not forget, America got a bloody nose militarily in Vietnam in the 70s. It got another bloody nose militarily in Afghanistan. It doesn't want a third one in Iran. So it wants to make sure whatever it is going to ultimately achieve, in other words, the defeat of the Revolutionary Guard and a new moderate leadership put in place, it doesn't want at a cost of American and British lives.
And John, what does Keir Starmer have to do to make President Trump happy? I mean, there are many analysts that suggest that he's mismanaged the relationship with Trump. What does he need to do now to try and win back his favour, do you think?
I think even if it is just empty rhetoric, he needs to tell President Trump, look, British troops are available. If we find that an air war is not sufficient and we have to put boots on the ground, then we're going to go into Iran in the same way as part of the coalition went into Kuwait, went into Iraq, and went into Afghanistan. However, the key thing that he can do, that Starmer can do in the meantime, is get more RAF jets, more RAF planes to join the coalition attack on Iran. It comes at a at a very heavy price. In other words, is it militarily possible to depose the ruling government in Iran, to take on the likes of the Revolutionary Guard, to destroy their influence militarily purely by jets and bombers? That's the key question that we have to ask.
I mean, do you think it would be unfair to ask whether Keir Starmer was actually up for the fight? I mean, he's got, 3 years left in office. He probably knows he won't, be in office after that. He's being attacked from the populist right and the populist left, so on both flanks. He seems to have worked out that really his best strategy is to appease the left in his party to try and stay alive for the next 3 years. I mean, he's not going to do anything, is he, that's going to risk that?
Well, I think to take your analysis even shorter, he needs to stay alive politically for the next 3 months to get himself through the May elections in mainland Britain. Because if Labour take a real pasting in those elections, his days at number 10 Downing Street are numbered. His other big problem that he has is the mismanagement of the immigration situation. It's known as the small boats crisis. Now, the big danger, if we bring in an Iranian aspect of this, the fear is, could Iranian terrorists be, shall we say, smuggling themselves into the United Kingdom for a potential terror war on the British mainland? He needs to get his migrant policy up to date. He needs to start vetting those very, very carefully, because the last thing he needs, apart from electoral disaster in May, is for a terrorist attack to take place here on the British mainland. The other thing that he's probably worried about as well, there's a lot of speculation around Washington at the minute that the Russians and the Chinese may allegedly be providing key intelligence to the Iranians, so that's the reason why Trump moved pretty fast in getting his jets to attack the Iran. The other thing is with Hezbollah in the Lebanon, that's going to tie down the Israelis. So they may not have the wherewithal, if they're facing a land war against Hezbollah in southern Lebanon, they may not have the boots on the ground to assist the Americans to go in to Iran. So we've got a real troublesome nature. The other part that we've got to take into consideration is, where does this all end? What is the end game? What is Trump and the allies, what are they trying to achieve? Is it just a case of putting the Revolutionary Guard militarily in their place? Is it just trying to depose the current Ayatollah? Because after the Israelis killed the first Ayatollah recently, they merely put someone with similar views in place. So the real situation is, what is the long game? And I suppose, yes, if we take the fact that Starmer may be there for another 3 years, how is Iran going to look in 3 years? What is going to be his foreign policy legacy when the next general election here in the United Kingdom is called?
John, what do you think the answer to that question is? Because we've seen, haven't we, the US-Israeli vision, mission statement slightly change in emphasis as this campaign's been prosecuted. We saw a reassertion a few days ago that actually the objective was never to create regime change. It was purely to diminish the capability of the IRGC. What do you think the mission is now at this point?
I think the very long-term mission is to completely depose the ruling Ayatollah's regime and militarily neutralize the Revolutionary Guard. If you take the radical Islamic view of the Revolutionary Guard, they're probably the best trained of all the militant groups in the Gulf region. So it's going to take a heck of a lot of military know-how and resources to get rid of them. I think the long-term aim is perhaps to rethink the return of the Persian royal family, the Shah, who was deposed originally in 1979. Now, he died the following year in Egypt, but his family is still alive. So it may well be that the long game could be to reinstate the Persian royal family with a new flag, democratic elections from that point of view, and neutralise entirely the influence of the Revolutionary Guard. Because let's not underestimate the potential. And I think that this is one of the problems, that Washington may have underestimated the potential and the training of the Revolutionary Guard.
Yes, indeed. Dr. Coulter, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your analysis very much indeed. Thank you. Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the Organisation of Turkic States' warning over rising tensions in the Middle East. Stay with us. On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Long before partition, Pakistanis were singled out, attacked, and forced from their homes.
More than 200,000 Muslims were eliminated through massacres, through displacement.
In all Indian states, the communities are being oppressed, and the Indian Army is committing atrocities against them.
I left Indian-occupied Kashmir and came to Azad Kashmir on foot.
We cannot even go to the graves of our loved ones. We cannot even pray for them.
What is the fault of the Kashmiri people?
Kashmir is the place where partition never ended.
The region of Kashmir is between 3 nuclear powers.
If a nuclear war breaks out here, not only the South Asia, but the entire world will be affected.
If India believes that people of Jammu and Kashmir are with them, let them go for their referendum tomorrow.
For a Kashmiri, what matters the most is Azadi, is the right of self-determination. Azadi from Indian hegemony.
Welcome back to PrimeTime. Foreign ministers from the Organisation of Turkic States have released a joint statement after an informal meeting in Istanbul on March the 7th, expressing concern about the worsening situation in the Middle East. Well, they warned that escalating conflicts are deepening humanitarian suffering and increasing the risk of wider regional instability. Now, the statement reflects concern among member states about the escalation of fighting across the region, which has led to loss of life, growing human suffering, and mounting humanitarian challenges. The ministers also condemned actions that put civilians at risk and threatens regional stability. At the same time, they reaffirmed their commitment to stronger political dialogue and closer cooperation on issues of shared interest. They also stressed their intention to deepen Turkic cooperation, promote stability in the region, and support sustainable development in line with the organisation's broader strategic goals. Well, to help us understand what this statement might mean for the wider region, I'm joined now by A News' Deputy Editor-in-Chief, Orkan Amishov. Orkan, always great to have you in the studio with us. Let's start out with the timing of this, and why now? Why the foreign ministers of the OTS speaking out at this moment?
It could be a coming-of-age moment for the Organization of Turkic States, in the same way as this organization, effectively this alliance of Turkic countries, emerged and officially confirmed as an international organization in the year 2021, 1 year after the Karabakh War. This particular juncture taking place after the 5th of March attack on Azerbaijan's Nakhchivan region and the airport located there shows that this organization is slowly, step by step, in a very incremental fashion, is moving from cultural solidarity, economic projects into security architecture. I think it's very clear. On the basis of that statement, what my key takeaway from that statement is that the spirit and the language of that statement says that attack on a member country, on a Turkic country, which is a member of the Organization of Turkic States, is attack against the entire Turkic world in many ways. There's no collective security guarantee inside the Organization of Turkic States. It's not geopolitical bloc as yet, but it is moving along those lines. I think crisis in and around the Islamic Republic of Iran will only intensify that process. There's a need for political consultation. There's also a need, if there is to be set of negotiations regarding the crisis involving Iran, Organization of Turkic States, individual member countries are to play an important role. Two countries are affected directly, physically. On the 5th of March, Azerbaijan's Nakhchivan airport was targeted in a drone attack. We know that. We know that that attack, that fire was coming from Iranian territory. I think, as was the case regarding violation of Turkish sovereignty, this attack was originated from Iranian territory, from isolated Iranian groups, effectively from IRGC component there, and the state attribution is there. Azerbaijan has got enough information about this matter. We live in the real world. We know the trajectory of the fire. We know from which particular point it was emanating in the first place, and we understand that there was no Israeli agent there, perhaps. Those people who tend to be more sympathetic towards the Islamic Republic of Iran, bearing in mind its current situation, predicament, which is really quite challenging. They appointed new supreme leader. They expect Muslim majority countries like Turkey and Azerbaijan to be more understanding towards Iran. I think that today's telephonic exchange between President Aliyev and Pezeshkian was a very good example of that understanding posture from Azerbaijan. We can discuss its details. I think it's an important part of the conversation there. But it looks like, as a result of this particular informal meeting and the statement produced there, which is a very strong statement, which could actually be regarded as a coming-of-age moment for this organization. We are currently in the de-escalation stage, but this de-escalation does not necessarily mean that it will be de-escalating further. Hope in the air is that it will, but of course these countries, in particular, I think collective security mechanism involving Azerbaijan and Turkey could further permeate the system involving Organization of Turkic States in the fullness of time.
And okay, what did you read in terms of the tone, the temperature of what the OTS was saying? Are they worried? Are they cautious? There was a sense of togetherness, as you put it. Is this a time where they're denoting concern? How would you sum up?
It's more than concern. Members of this organization are very concerned about the expansion of the geography of the conflict. Iran is neighboring with both Azerbaijan and of course with Turkey. From the very beginning, Azerbaijan has been very steadfast, and this is a position maintained by all the members of Organization of Turkic States. We do not consider this conflict between this bloc, with this collection of countries, and any other country. We do not want to be part of it. We will not let our territory be used against Iran or any other country. We believe in negotiations and diplomacy, and if there is going to be any further diplomatic negotiations there, countries like Turkey and Azerbaijan naturally should be involved, and perhaps Organization of Turkish States as a body should be involved. And I think that conversation revolving around regional consultation means that OTS, this organization, sees itself as a platform within the confines of which this matter should be discussed. Because one of the fundamental problems that Western world is facing, it's about understanding the realities of Iran. Iran is a very complex society. Today everybody talks about Mujtaba Ali Khamenei. Will he survive? Will he be the target of Israeli-US attacks? What will happen to the Islamic Republic of Iran? People in Azerbaijan and Turkey understand the resilience of Iran very well. They understand that Iranian population, whatever we may think of the system currently present there, does not like external foreign intervention. It's not like that. And we see that some elements of Iranian society, in particular that 20%, which is very loyal to the current system there, is very resilient, and they are together with their leaders. It will be impossible to arrange something along the lines of ground invasion there. Therefore, the knowledge and expertise coming from this region, from this country, from Turkey, must be taken into account. Back to your original inquiry, it's more than concern. We do not, regional actors here do not want spillover. Basically, a couple of things. First of all, question of sovereignty. Azerbaijani sovereignty has been violated on the 5th of March. That drone entered Azerbaijani airspace, struck Nakhchivan airport, caused injuries and so forth. Basically, in the eyes of international law, it's not just a mere violation of Azerbaijani sovereignty, it's an illegal use of force because state attribution is there. It can be proven. I'm sure Iranians do understand it perfectly well. They're currently engaged in what I would conditionally call a sort of a policy of plausible deniability. One particular power center related to IRGC is being more steadfast, using radical language, and civic leadership is using completely different language in line with the time-honored traditions of diplomacy. This is their style, this is their modus operandi, and I'm not at all surprised. I get quite surprised when people are saying that, look here, the president is saying that they are not involved. It's not good enough. Words matter, but deeds matter even more. Back to the point about why this region is concerned. Middle Corridor. Earlier we heard from Ursula von der Leyen saying that importance of Middle Corridor has been re-emphasized. We earlier heard from Azerbaijani officials from the SSS, State Security Service, that a number of individuals who are believed to be connected with IRGC were arrested, and their targets, amongst other targets, included, of course, Israeli embassy here, Jewish community, their leader, and also BTS, Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline. Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan is an important asset. It's about connectivity, connecting Azerbaijan, Georgia, Turkey. It's a vital element of the Middle Corridor. So these countries have assets. Azerbaijan, Turkey have assets to protect, and therefore they're very concerned. They're also very concerned because when US and Israel are conducting these joint attacks on Iran, after the killing of the former supreme leader, Iran was bound to retaliate beyond the ordinary, out of the ordinary. And as a result of that, they targeted those targets which are not really within the scope of their retaliatory space. And I want to go back to the statement by President Pezeshkian, which he made, I think, on Saturday. He said that, after the killing, he said that after the killing of supreme leader of Iran, our commanders, patriotic sons of this nation, were so unhappy that they went beyond they were completely out of the control, and they acted out of the chain of command. I think that element in that statement also means that probably one of the IRGC commanders, being in a very bad moral state, decided to retaliate against Nakhchivan airport as well. So within that statement, you see they're accepting the fact that there are certain elements within the army, within the IRGC, and within Basij probably, who could act on their own volition, at their own initiative. They do not exclude that possibility, but formally they say it's not our policy to attack our neighboring countries. It takes me back to the Yes Minister provision. You remember that episode regarding positive discrimination, where Sir Humphrey and other colleagues said, in principle they do not target any Muslim Brazilian countries, but in practice it looks like they do.
Yes, very good indeed. It's very interesting that. It's almost like, from what you're describing, though, in a sense they were articulating that it was proportionate that it was extreme, it was beyond the norm, but it was proportionate to an extreme and beyond the norm attack that they'd received. I mean, let's just go back to the OTS for a moment.
Yeah.
That is an organisation which is undeniably growing in authority and influence. What about the practical help that it can provide? We heard a lot about the importance of people, of civilians, of protecting people. What's your view on the ability of that community, that group, that organisation to put in place practical help for people?
There are a number of things that organisation in question could actually do. One of them, in order to make sure that the potential humanitarian crisis is averted, they could stop, and I think Turkey and Azerbaijan are to play an important role in that, so they coordinate mechanisms to avoid any possibility for some elements within the Kurdistan region of Iraq, which is the northern part of Iraq, or even Syria. They should make sure that possibility of Kurdish elements there, connected with PKK and other groups, and the possibility of them entering Iranian territory, the western Azerbaijan province of Iran, which is traditionally populated by Azerbaijanis. There are some Kurdish elements as well. This will allow for Azerbaijan and Turkey to make sure that at their border that humanitarian crisis is avoided. Because what President Donald Trump said earlier, he said that he's not entirely sure. Of course, he's sending mixed signals as well. The substantial majority of that mixed signaling is, of course, deliberate. He's doing that on purpose, creating chaos and then letting others deal with the consequences of that chaos, which has been one of the key elements of his foreign policy. He said that the map of Iran at the end of this conflict or afterwards may not look the way it looks now. And then he said that he does not want Kurdish elements to be involved there. I think that by Kurdish elements, he did mean certain elements within the Iraqi Kurdistan who are actually very much unhappy with the Iranian government. Therefore, I think number one aim, in order to avoid spillover effect, they have to contain any Kurdish incursion into Iran. And if there is such an incursion, then they have to deal with the consequences. Of course, naturally, we understand what sort of implication could follow that. It could be the fallout of the complete collapse of the Iranian state. There could be a civil war between certain Kurdish elements and central government, and that should be avoided. Or if it happens, there should be control. I think that should be the policy. Second element there, of course, humanitarian help. I think it's something absolutely vital. We know from President Aliyev's speech delivered at the Security Council a couple of days ago, Iran's deputy foreign minister, whom I interviewed on the self-same day when this attack happened, requested help because a number of Iranians were stranded in Lebanon, and Azerbaijan was actually very, very helpful and without demanding any money or anything of that nature. So if there is a request there, I think Azerbaijan and Turkey should act in line and should be very helpful. Everybody expects organization Turkish states, and Azerbaijan and Turkey in particular, because of their geography, because of proximity, to be understanding towards Iran. I think President Aliyev's conversation with President Pezeshkian today is a very good example of that desire to be sympathetic towards the fate of the country, because we know that a number of decisions have been reversed. One decision by the cabinet of ministers, according to which all the traffic the traffic has been was halted, temporarily suspended on the 5th of March. That decision has been reversed. So we got communication between Iran and Azerbaijan, and that communication could help in a humanitarian sense as well. And then, of course, President extended his congratulations to the Supreme Leader as well, which I wasn't expecting at this today, to be honest with you. But it's also a very reasonable course of action. It shows that Azerbaijan is not in favor of escalation with Iran. Azerbaijan in favor of actually understanding what happened. I think President Aliyev's initial statement delivered on the 5th of March was a sort of a retaliatory escalation. He was in a proportionate fashion reacting to what happened. And I think on the basis of my understanding of the situation, because all of us have been following his speeches, statements, bearing in mind the language he used, he naturally had been informed about the realities on the ground. And the strengths and also radical nature of some of the terms he used are perfectly commensurate with the realities surrounding this drone attack. And after that, after using that strong language, he spoke to President Pezeshkian. He again, send its condolences on the occasion of the passing of former Supreme Leader, congratulate the new Supreme Leader, reverse the previous decision on suspension of traffic movement across the Iran-Azerbaijan border. Azerbaijan taking enough de-escalatory measures in order to see if the good intention in Iran will make any change in terms of bilateral connection between these two countries.
Well, Ken, always fascinating to speak with you. Thank you very much indeed for coming in. Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the message from Brussels, where EU leaders are urging unity and warning that Europe must act decisively as tensions rise in the Gulf and the crisis in Iran deepens. Stay with us.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
Yaptığınız atışa hazır. 3, 2, 1, ateş. Hedef imha edildi.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
A warm welcome back to Primetime, wherever you're watching now. EU leaders addressed diplomats in Brussels on Monday with a clear warning. Europe must act decisively as tensions rise in the Gulf and the crisis in Iran deepens. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, together with EU Foreign Policy Chief Kaja Kallas and European Parliament President Roberta Metsola, all urged member states to stay united, support the people of Iran and show that Europe is ready to act as a credible global player.
And our message to the world is that they should not underestimate Europe's resolve, strength and willingness to act. We need to allow Europe to be seen as the credible actor that it is. Iran's attacks on the Gulf, including in the Strait of Hormuz and the Gulf of Oman, they are condemnable, they are unjustifiable, and they must stop immediately. Just as every member state must know for certain that we will stand together to face down any threat. And in this regard, we must continue to stand with the people of Iran. Their fight for freedom and the ability to choose their own destiny is not political, but existential.
Okay, for more reaction from Brussels, we're joined now by A News' Katie Wilson. Katie, good to see you. A strong speech there. How can I put this delicately though, Katie? Are they actually going to do anything though?
Yeah, strong words, wasn't it? Strong rhetoric, which we're often used to seeing from the EU, but obviously that question always is, okay, how is that actually going to translate to practical action? And essentially that was what this was about, and that was what they really wanted to get across. They wanted to show that this isn't just about rhetoric, and Ursula von der Leyen talked about the need for Europe to show what she called strategic resolve. So yeah, in practical terms, what does that mean? Well, we're likely looking at additional sanctions, increasing financial and military support to partners, and stepping up coordination with allies like the United States and NATO. And the message she was trying to send to diplomats was that Europe cannot afford to appear hesitant or even divided at a time of growing geopolitical tension. And many have praised this and said this is actually long overdue, but others are skeptical, as we've seen from things like the Russia-Ukraine war, that actually having a united front between all 27 member states is actually quite difficult, and that takes time. It's easier said than done, to say the least. Kaja Kallas was focusing more on the EU's diplomatic and security role, and she told ambassadors that the bloc has to be more proactive internationally, not just reacting to crises, but shaping outcomes. And again, what does that mean practically? Well, it's likely going to be stronger use of the EU's economic tools like sanctions, trade leverage, and financial support packages. But there's also a greater push to align member states behind a common foreign policy line, because that is often where things get complicated in practice, as we've seen. So they're looking to overcome that hurdle, especially in light of this Middle East crisis. And that's really been the key point here across this conference, that there is appetite for action there, and it seems to be there at the leadership level. But the EU still operates by consensus on many foreign policy decisions, and that means translating that strong rhetoric into concrete policy, and that can take time, because it's rarely going to be straightforward to get all 27 member states on board with a single foreign policy line.
And Katie, some big names were there: von der Leyen, Kallas. Just walk us through who else was in the room.
Yeah, you're right. So it was a significant gathering in terms of who was present. So this meeting was part of the annual EU Ambassadors Conference in Brussels, and that brings together the EU's diplomatic network from around the world. So roughly 145 EU ambassadors and heads of EU delegations were there, and they represent the bloc in countries and international organisations globally. So alongside those diplomats, as you mentioned, several of the EU's most significant political figures were also addressing the room. So Kaja Kallas was at the centre of all of this. She's essentially the EU's top diplomat, and she's responsible for coordinating the bloc's foreign policy. She hosted the conference, opened the discussion, and really set the tone for the week. She talked about the geopolitical pressures facing Europe and the need for a more strategic EU foreign policy. As you mentioned, you had Ursula von der Leyen also there. Her role is important because she represents the executive arm of the EU. So that's the institution that proposes policies, sanctions, and economic measures. And her speech focused on how Europe needs to be adapting to a world that's becoming more unstable and competitive. And of course, that's in light of the conflict in the Middle East as well. But yeah, other key EU leaders were there and also took part in the discussions. We saw Roberta Metsola in the VT representing the EU's legislative branch. branch, Antonio Costa, who represents the collective leadership of the EU's 27 member states. So if you put all of those names together, you've essentially got the full institutional lineup. So you've got the Commission, the Parliament, the Council, and the EU's diplomatic service all represented in the same room. And of course that wasn't an accident, and they wanted to show that this conference matters. It's not just about giving speeches, it's actually an opportunity for the full EU leadership to brief the entire diplomatic network on the bloc's priorities, of course, in the light of this Middle East crisis, but also on things like Ukraine, trade, sanctions, and global partnerships.
And beyond the statements, Katie, have they actually announced any concrete steps emerging from this?
Yeah, so in terms of the Iran conflict in particular, and many other policies, we have seen concrete steps beyond the rhetoric, but it's very cautious. Everything in Brussels is typically a very slow process. So in terms of the Iran conflict, the EU is meeting with Gulf partners to coordinate a diplomatic response, and this is going to focus on preventing further escalation and safeguarding critical shipping routes, particularly around the Strait of Hormuz. There's also been a push to protect EU citizens in the region, and that's through the Civil Protection Mechanism. So that includes contingency planning for evacuations, if that's ever going to be needed, and support for repatriation, which may already be necessary. We're seeing that already from some countries. Energy and internal security are really going to be key with this as well. So Brussels has set up task forces to monitor energy markets and track potential supply disruptions. And discussions are taking place about coordinating law enforcement as well. If instability drives migration or security incidents, I think the last thing the EU is going to want is another refugee crisis in Europe. And on the security side, discussions have been underway about potential maritime operations to protect shipping lanes, but again, we have to remember that any military action would require full agreement among all 27 member states, so that's a big hurdle to overcome for that to happen. So I think the question is whether this proactive but cautious approach, we can say, is going to actually keep pace with this rapidly evolving situation in the Middle East, and also with a president like Trump in the White House.
Yeah, very interesting. And specifically with the Middle East crisis, Katie, what did they say about the vision for the EU's role going forward, specifically in relation to that crisis?
Yeah, so they did address the situation in Iran in fairly stark terms. So they described it as one of the most serious geopolitical crises currently facing Europe. And Kaja Kallas said the region had entered what she called a completely new situation following that latest escalation. So she warned that the conflict risks bringing uncertainty and instability across the entire Middle East and potentially far beyond it. So she was pretty harsh towards Iran. She said Iran has been responsible for years of regional tensions and violence, and said the EU is deeply concerned about the possibility of the conflict widening further. But at the same time, she stressed that Europe's priority remains preventing that wider regional war, potentially not in line with the White House, given their recent actions. So she argues that conflict ultimately needs to end through diplomacy rather than continued escalation, potentially a little aim at Trump there. So I wonder how he'll be reacting to that. Ursula von der Leyen described the developments in Iran as extremely worrying, warning that the conflict could have major global consequences, not only for security, but as I mentioned, for energy markets. Obviously, a big concern for Europe in recent years, migration, economic stability. The EU leaders have been urging all sides to show restraint and to respect international law, while also preparing for the broader fallout from the crisis. Officials also pointed to some practical steps that the EU is already taking, and that includes evacuating European citizens from the region, deploying EU naval missions to help protect shipping lanes and maritime security around those key trade routes linked to the Gulf. So we've sort of got this twofold message coming from Brussels, that they're clear about this concern over Iran and its role in the risk of a wider regional conflict, but equally we've got Europe's objective being de-escalation and diplomacy. So a balancing act almost for Brussels, I think.
Yeah, very interesting. Both the OTS and the EU really kind of fine-tuning their strategies with regard to this crisis. Katie, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Okay, after the break, we'll take a look at the election in Nepal, where a rapper turned politician, Balandra Shah, is leading the vote and appears to be set for a landslide victory. Please stay with us.
The global defense industry plays a vital role in ensuring national security. In Turkey, companies in this sector strengthen domestic production and enhance military independence.
ISA-based radar, Murat radar. This is fully digital radar. This is new for world. Aselsan today, Turkish technology leader and global technology provider.
Gökdeniz atışı hazır. 3, 2, 1, ateş. Hedef imha edildi.
I'm Nuray Mustafa. This is One on One.
Inside Politics delves deeply into the heart of global issues shaping our world today. Join me for your go-to source of political analysis from across the region and beyond.
On World Business, we meet the boardroom leaders making market-moving decisions. And find out how leaders are dealing with continuous technological disruption.
Shaken to its very foundation.
Long before partition, Pakistanis were singled out, attacked, and forced from their homes.
More than 200,000 Muslims were eliminated through massacres, through displacement.
In all Indian states, the communities are being oppressed, and the Indian Army is committing atrocities against them.
I left Indian-occupied Kashmir and came to Azad Kashmir on foot.
We cannot even go to the graves of our loved ones. We cannot even pray for them.
What is the fault of the Kashmiri people?
Kashmir is the place where partition never ended.
The region of Kashmir is between 3 nuclear powers.
If a nuclear war breaks out here, not only the South Asia, but the entire world will be affected.
If India believes that people of Jammu and Kashmir are with them, let them go for their referendum tomorrow.
For a Kashmiri, what matters the most is Azadi, is the right of self-determination. Azadi from Indian hegemony.
As America sleeps, Europe is waking, and the East has begun its day. A News is right here at the center, bringing you the latest stories as they break. I'm Nadia Jani, here with you each weekday morning to share latest world news and the stories shaping our region. Across all platforms and wherever you get your news, we explore the context behind the big headlines. Live from Baku, I bring you a diverse mix of regional and international news, sport and politics for you, an audience that wants a bit more. So join me Monday to Friday for the latest headlines, expert analysis and live updates from around the world. Around the globe and live from Baku, this is Daybreak here on A News.
Washington to Beijing, Tehran to Kabul, to Tbilisi to Tashkent.
Hello, I'm Jay. Challenges.
Today is the third.
We're with you 24/7, taking you live to the front lines of the day's biggest stories.
Welcome to Gabala. One important note to fears. I'm here.
Azerbaijan and Armenia.
Hello, we are reporting on the 8th of November.
Reporting from Paris,
Dar es Salaam, Tel Aviv,
Washington,
London,
Moscow,
Kiev, Berlin,
Rio de Janeiro, Beijing, Bangkok, Tbilisi, Tashkent,
Almaty, Kazakhstan,
Port Sudan, Tehran, Islamabad, Istanbul,
Kabul, Port-au-Prince.
Welcome back. You're watching Primetime. Now, in Nepal, a 35-year-old rapper turned politician, Balandra Shah, is leading in the parliamentary elections, and according to official results, looks set for a landslide victory. Well, voters in Nepal are choosing 165 seats through direct votes and another 110 through proportional representation. So far, Balandra Shah's party has secured 124 of the directly elected seats and 58 through proportional representation. Well, the country has struggled with years of political instability, which has weighed on the economy and fueled unemployment and corruption. Now, the protests in September 2025 began a social media ban, triggered nationwide demonstrations, eventually forcing then Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli to resign. Well, to discuss what this election result could mean for Nepal and the wider political climate, I'm joined now by Devar Shah Pant, a human rights advocate who's joining us from London in the UK. Devar Shah, always good to have you on the show. Thank you very much for joining us. Very interesting this, isn't it? How significant do you think this is for the wider political landscape in Nepal?
Well, this is a hugely significant moment for Nepal's political landscape because it looks like a real break from the old order, not just a routine movement. And in the general election, Balan Shah, who is running from the Rashtriya Swatantra Party, the RSP, surged to the front, winning at 122 seats out of 165 first past the post seat, with a few more reported leads reported during the counting. Since Nepal's House of Representatives have 275 seats and 138 are needed for the majority, that puts Shah's campaign in a commanding position to shape the next government. Makes historic is the message of the youth voters. This was the first national elections after the 2025 youth-led protest that brought down the previous establishment of the government. So the vote became a referendum on corruption, unemployment, dynastic politics, and a public frustration with traditional parties. At the same time, this is not automatically a solved story for Nepal. The victory is politically positive, but governing will require much campaigning. So expectations are now on job, clean governance, and stability, while Nepal still faces economic pressure and outward migration, and a tough geopolitical balancing between India and China. So the result is significant because it may mark the biggest political reset in years, but its true impact will depend on whether this new force can actually deliver.
And rap musician turned politician, that's a fairly unusual transition. To what extent do you think that explains the popularity?
Well, Balin Shah's appeal comes from the fact that the voters did not see him just a musician or just as a rapper. They see him as someone who had been speaking their anger long before he entered politics. His raps were deeply political, focused on corruption, inequality, and urban frustration, and the failure of political class with working class and the middle class Nepalese who already felt ignored by the mainstream parties. And recent describe him as a figure whose politically charged lyrics, outsider image, and high establishment messages connected especially strongly with the young and frustrated voters. And that became much stronger when he proved he could convert that message into an actual electoral success. In 22, he ran as an independent for the mayor of Kathmandu and one of the established party candidates, which made him symbol of this rebellion against traditional politics. A mayor, the public, he was noticed for taking visible actions against civic issues like waste management, infrastructure, and public space enforcement. And that gave supporters evidence that he was not only a protest figure, but also an executive willing to act. And what really expanded his popularity beyond Kathmandu is that many Nepalese saw his mayoral tenure as a national example. He came to represent old party networks, and his image as a blunt, energetic, non-dynastic leader resonated far beyond the capital. So his appeal is a mix of cultural credibility, political frustration, and a track record that made people believe he might actually deliver change.
And clearly winning is a huge achievement for him and his team, but it might just be, Devashar, mightn't it, that winning is the easiest part of this, because after so much political instability, he's going to have an incredibly difficult job to create stability, hold things together, and present a new face of governance in the country.
Yes. So this election could be a turning point for Nepal, but the deeper challenges have not disappeared. Nepal's instability not only in recent years or in last September, even before the democratic transition in between 2006 and 2008, the country struggled a very long period of centralized rule, weak democratic practices, and repeated political disruption. So the public desires for a change today, that comes from a very long historic experience, not just one election cycle. And what makes this moment different is that voters, especially the voters, are trying to invest hope in a new political force. We have seen this pattern before in Nepal. New parties and young leaders rise, people become hopeful, and then the test becomes whether they govern and not just inspire. So this time, supporters argue that leading party brings in more educated, more professional faces and may therefore govern a little differently. And that gives a reason for a very cautious optimism. But at the same time, this election is taking place after a mass-led protest driven by the anger over corruption, unemployment, and political accountability, which shows that the structural frustration remains very real. So, in my point of view, this may be the beginning of a turning point, but not yet a proof of one.
Devashar, we always enjoy your analysis. Thank you very much indeed for joining us tonight on Primetime. Okay, let's now hear from our regional correspondents. Iranian civilian and military officials have pledged their loyalty to the new supreme leader, Ayatollah Syed Mojtaba Khamenei. A News' Touraj Shiralilo reports now from Tehran.
This is Enqilab Square in downtown Tehran, where people have gathered to express their oath of allegiance with Iran's new leader, Ayatollah Syed Mojtaba Khamenei. He is the third leader of the Islamic Republic after its founder, Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, and his father, Ayatollah Sayyid Ali Khamenei, since 1979 Islamic Revolution. Mojtaba Khamenei substituted his father after he was killed in U.S.-Israel air raids on 28th of February. The decision was announced by Iran's Assembly of Experts, an 88-member body of senior clerics responsible for selecting the leader. In a statement broadcast on state TV, the assembly said Mojtaba Khamenei was appointed by a decisive vote during an extraordinary session held late Sunday. It is the 10th day of war, and ralliers are chanting anti-US and anti-Israeli slogans, demanding revenge and punishment of the aggressors. Meantime, officials in Iran across the civilian and military ranks have expressed their support to the new leader after his election was announced early Monday. Touraj Shiralilo reporting for A News from downtown Tehran.
The conflict between Iran and Israel is intensifying, with new missile strikes reported today. A News correspondent Maria Rodriguez has the very latest from Jerusalem.
One person was killed and two others critically injured when an Iranian missile struck central Israel. The victims were construction workers at a site where missile debris landed. At least 6 impact sites reported today after cluster bomb attack over the country. We are in Jerusalem, and although the situation here seems calmer at first glance, we can hear loud interceptions, but it is unclear where they are happening. The sirens in the old city do not activate unless there is a direct threat. Also, the number of shelters is much lower than in Tel Aviv. The buildings are much older and consequently are not adapted to current safety regulations. USA envoys Witkoff and Kastner canceled their visit to Israel set for Tuesday. IDF says Hezbollah gunmen operating in Christian village in South Lebanon targeted in a strike. IDF troops began a targeted and limited raid to eliminate and dismantle Hezbollah infrastructure. Prior to the entry of ground forces, numerous targets were struck from the air and ground. This operation aims to strengthen forward defensive positions and provide an additional layer of protections for residents of northern Israel right now who are in the greatest danger.
Evacuations continue at the Astara border between Iran and Azerbaijan, with more than 1,900 people crossing into Azerbaijan as tensions escalate. A News' Chimnaz Shalar reports now from Astara.
From February 28 until today, more than 1,900 people have been evacuated from Iran to Azerbaijan. Among them are 314 Azerbaijani citizens. The largest group of evacuees are Chinese nationals, with 541 people crossing into Azerbaijan. They are followed by 290 citizens of Russia, 173 from Tajikistan, and 123 from Pakistan.
My name is Amir Hamza. I'm from Pakistan. We went to Georgia, Iran 1 month ago to get a Georgian visa because I'm studying in Georgia medicine, and he's my friend. We went to Iran to get his visa. We stayed there for like a month. It was 28 when the bombing started. It was our flight day. We were leaving Tehran to go to Georgia, but the bombing started. Everything was off, no internet. We don't have like internet to contact our family. Everyone was worried. But then one of our friends, he's Iranian, he took us to his home in Gurgan. It was far city from Tehran, so it was safer. When we were going to left Tehran, we went to the terminal to get the bus. At the same moment, the bomb started. It was like half a kilometer away from us, and we were terrified because if we are like 2 minutes late, the bombing would be on us and would be dead. But we went to Gurgaon, and then from Gurgaon we took taxi to Astara. We stayed here for 2 days, and then we got to know like we need like border control code, some type of code to enter Azerbaijan. One of our Pakistani friends, he helped us to get the code. We got the code, and now we are here safe.
In total, citizens of more than 60 countries have entered Azerbaijan through this crossing. Diplomatic missions are also using the Astara checkpoint. Most recently, Hungary's ambassador to Iran and 8 embassy staff members were evacuated through this border crossing. Meanwhile, Azerbaijan's cabinet of ministers announced that cargo transportation across the Azerbaijan-Iran border, including transit, will resume from today. From here, we are at Astara crossing. We continue to monitor the situation. I'm Shimnaz Shahlar with Nijat Kasimov reporting from Astara for A News.
Well, that is all from Prime Time. Please do join us tomorrow evening for plenty more news and analysis. And from all of us here at A News, thanks for watching.